It is October the 11th, 2014. This is 508, a show about Worcester. This week with special guest, Chris Robarge. Hi, Chris.
Hi.
Also on this week, Brendan Malikan smoking an e-cigarette. Hi,
How are
Brendan.
What's shaking?
I'm okay. I am Michael Benedetti. This week on the show, our title is going to be So Much Stuff, because there's so much stuff that has happened in the month since we taped the podcast. There's so much stuff going on this week.
Not actually more stuff, just the fewer shows, so we've got more stuff to catch up on.
No, there is more stuff actually.
You think there's more stuff?
I think that week for week there's more stuff going on this week. In fact, a number of people have been kind enough to send in suggestions of what we should talk about this week. We're going to talk about some of your suggestions. We can't talk about all of your suggestions because there is so much stuff. But please keep the suggestions coming. You can go to pieandcoffee.org or email us at pieandcoffee@gmail.com. And now,
For stuff.
the headlines. The big headline this week is that the Worcester City Council has hired a new city manager. It's former State Senator Ed Augustus, who's been serving as the temporary city manager for the last 9 months. The council wasn't happy with any of the candidates who'd been found through a nationwide search, so they selected Augustus, who originally said he'd only be temporary, but changed his mind. The only councilor voting against hiring Ed Augustus was Connie Lukes, who said that she didn't object to Augustus so much as she objected to how the whole process went. And we will be talking more about this week also. The Insane Clown Posse were in Worcester last weekend. We haven't had any juggalos on this show for a couple of years, I guess. So Brendan had emailed me a while back saying we should interview them, but we couldn't interview them because we couldn't do a show because my parents were in town. But as it turns out...
They were in town for the show.
They weren't in town for the show. They were in town to hang out with me and other cool people in Worcester. But they ended up actually staying in the same hotel as a lot of other cool people from Worcester, namely a bunch of juggalos. And I just want to give this, they got to talk to some juggalos, they got to learn about the culture a little bit. Quote from my father, there were footprints in the elevator and butt prints.
Is your father going to make his way to the gathering this year as a result of his positive experience with local juggalos?
I don't think so.
No?
I don't think so. But I think he was surprised at, the positivity of his interaction.
And the butt prints.
He was all, yes,
That's
absolutely.
more of a physics problem, though. That's probably just curious about.
Also, this weekend, the big Shock and Rock Festival. Rock and Shock Festival.
Rock and Shock.
The Shock and Jock Festival is a different thing. Horror and sports. This is going to be rock and roll and horror coming up this weekend at the Palladium.
Exciting.
Yeah,
Exciting
I'm not gonna go.
What
But
kind of prints do you think will be left in the elevators after that?
bloody prints.
Bloody prints.
I don't know. Zombie prints. There have recently been some gang shootings in Worcester, and there have been a ton of drug arrests by police in response to those. I feel like this is one of these stories that we really can't add anything to, but I just want to throw it out there. The Telegram and Gazette reports that 20 trucks have hit the low railroad bridge on Cambridge Street so far this year. And so they're going to get a thing, potentially they're going to get a thing called a height clearance curtain. This is one of these deals, Brendan, which is like a big, metal arch, and it has chains hanging down, and then there's lengths of pipe at the end of each chain, such that if a truck that is too high comes in, hopefully the driver will hear a bunch of pipes hitting the top of his truck and stop before getting it stuck under a bridge.
And if not, then what?
And then he'll get it stuck under a bridge.
Then you'll get a truck stuck under a bridge.
That's amazing, though. 20. That's like a couple times a month.
I feel as though this week, you said that there's a lot going on this week, and I feel this week more than any other week recently, I've been involved in a lot of side conversations that have to do with short-term versus long-term planning in Worcester. And I think this is actually a perfect example. Like the curtain, I mean, sure, like you should probably put that on every bridge, right? You get some spare chains hanging around. What else are you going to do with them? Might as well hang them on a bridge so the truck doesn't get stuck. But it seems like there's probably somewhere out there a better engineering solution to keeping your bridges from getting trucks stuck under them, or your trucks getting stuck under bridges.
Like
whichever
raise the
side.
bridge?
Raising a bridge might be hard. That might be really hard. But I always thought, like, eventually we resurface roads. If I'm not mistaken, actually Cambridge Street is being resurfaced this year. There's a giant blinky sign on Cambridge Street that says between now and February 2nd, find a different route because we're doing tons of construction. I often wonder, is like anyone actually said, hey, maybe we should dig the area under this bridge like 2 feet deeper, and then we won't have trucks stuck under it anymore. But I'm not an engineer, so I'm not going to, maybe that isn't a viable solution, but something tells me out there's probably a really smart person who could come up with a better way to keep trucks from getting stuck under the bridges. Or maybe even like a big sign that says no trucks.
Catapults. There's a lot of options. Ramps.
Yeah.
As part of Charter Cable moving to all digital service, several channels are going to be moved, including public access channel WCCA, where this show is seen. They're going to be moving from Channel 13 to like Channel 193.
Correct you, Mike. Was seen.
Was seen. This show,
We're now going to be on Channel 4 million.
We're going to be on Channel 4 million coming up.
Yeah.
And the city council and a lot of other people in town have raised some ruckus around this, but I don't think it's going to change anything. I think we're going to move to Channel 4 million.
Yeah.
So just keep your eyes open, viewers.
You'll find us eventually. We'll be up there between high def, non-local sports and pornography.
It's a good place to be. Maybe the top story of the week, next to the city manager thing, is that 3,000-pound gargoyles are missing from the Dream Center on Chestnut Street. These were removed when the former Chestnut Street Congregational Church was remodeled in 2006. They were supposed to be stored in the basement, and it was recently found that they are not in the basement. One person told Nick Katsopoulos from the Telegram and Gazette that they had never been in the basement, that he had seen them just loaded onto trucks and driven away. Right now, people are traveling around to various warehouses in New England looking for these gargoyles, looking for some trace of the 18,000 pounds worth of gargoyles that have gone missing from the city.
Worth of gargoyles.
Finally, Brendan, if you are not registered to vote at your current address and you want to vote in November, stop watching this and do it now, because you will have at most one day to register to vote if you're watching this.
Get out there. Stop watching.
Stop watching and
remember what channel
vote.
you're watching on so you can come back to
It's going to change when you come back. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. Chris, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
We're doing good. I want to talk about topics of the week. I think we don't have a lot to say about the gargoyles. Maybe we have some I don't know, some final thoughts about the city manager process.
Well, I think before with the city manager process, I have to say, as someone who has not always lived in Worcester, this city seems to be really good at losing big things. I noticed that Orson goes missing a lot, and Turtle Boy was gone for a while, some years ago when I moved here, and now we've got, 24,000 pounds of gargoyles, so it seems like a very interesting thing that happens in Worcester that maybe doesn't happen as much as other places. I don't know.
Like the economy's gone missing. There's thousands of jobs have gone missing.
That used to be pretty big. Yeah.
Somebody should look into this. I think we have a local FBI office now. They might want to get on the case. There seems to be something bigger than a typical cat burglar running around.
I think actually the question would be, what is the largest sculpture that's ever gone missing in our city's history? It probably is these 6 gargoyles tied for first.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what Turtle Boy weighs. I don't think it's probably quite up there. Orson's big, but he's not super heavy. But just an odd trend. Orson is the giant polar bear at Polar.
Oh, okay.
The inflated polar bear.
Yeah, so he doesn't weigh anything.
He's large. He's not heavy. Yeah.
Did that actually go missing, or was it just shot again? Because I used to get picked off by arrows all the time when I was a kid. People would shoot crossbows at it from 290.
Yeah, maybe that's what happened. I know you get shot. I know that there were some college pranks where Orson got stolen a couple times in return. And just an outsider, note. It seems like a thing that happens a lot here. I don't know.
It's a city. I don't know. So to get back to the city manager thing. So you are, of course, known to 508 viewers as a member of the Citizens Advisory Board, which is a big board that's involved in getting people onto all the other boards and commissions. Also an ACLU guy. But recently, you have left the Citizens Advisory Board, right?
I have, yeah. I resigned effective, I don't remember the date, a few weeks ago.
Okay. And it was because of all the city manager stuff, yeah?
It was. It was. There were a few factors in play, but definitely the straw that broke the camel's back was the stuff that happened around the city manager's appointment. And I feel like it's a very odd world when I get to say this, but I completely agree with Connie Lukes and her take on the situation, in that it's not the candidate that they wound up with. It's the way that they got there.
So now I had talked to people, and certainly I've talked to plenty of people who feel like everything is fine. Ed Augustus is a good, solid guy. The process was kind of screwed up, but whatever. And then I've talked to some people who are like, this is just incompetence and or corruption. I feel like people's responses to this, I've thought for people I've talked to, their responses are all along the spectrum. What do you think, what were your concerns with this? What do you think went down here?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what went down. I mean, I have some theories, but the way that I feel about it is that it just, it was a terrible process, even in a city that is not really known for having great processes.
What was wrong with the process?
The process, I mean, from the beginning, you had a candidate. So you had Ed Augustus, who became a candidate for the temporary job all of a sudden in a city council meeting, where there was majority support, but nobody had talked about it beforehand. But somehow everyone was totally fine, was able to support a decision that they were just then hearing about at that moment. So you had this sort of controversy when Ed first came in, which I think was part of the reason why he said that he wasn't going to be a candidate for the permanent job.
By the way, Scott Zobak is over there.
There's Zobak. He got his tzatziki.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, and make no mistake, Ed did say he was not going to be a candidate for the permanent position. He said he wasn't going to take it. He wasn't interested in taking it. They asked him a few times after that, and he said, nope, I'm definitely not going to take it.
Right. And that was maybe one of these things that put people's minds at ease a little bit. People who said, okay, you got a guy who is widely liked and probably very good, competent at the job, but at the same time, he's very insidery. He's donated money to the campaigns of some of these people who are on the city council voting for him. There is deliberation. As city councilors especially have pointed out, there's nothing in the city charter that says how this is supposed to happen.
Nope.
Like, they can just pull a name out of the hat. They can be like, the next guy who walks in this room is the next city manager. They can do whatever. They can
that would
presume.
Actually be kind of cool.
Can they put it up for bid? I don't know. But maybe. But there's nothing, at least in that particular part of the charter, that says that they can't just sell the job to somebody. So, but as far as trying to make the process seem open, seem deliberative, seem positive, the deliberative aspect of it was real short. The insideriness of it was very high, but he said, listen, I'm not going to do this job forever. And I think a lot of people were like, okay, fine, okay.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, I think that's kind of how it was. I think precisely because there is no prescribed process for how we're supposed to arrive at a manager, that's why it's imperative that city council come up with a good and open and transparent process if they want people to feel like the decision was arrived at in an open and transparent way, and that's why they have to stick with it. And I think that's what happened is they created this process, and you could argue that it wasn't perfect. I would argue that it wasn't perfect, but they went through the process. They got some candidates, and then they decided to walk away from all three of the candidates. They didn't even offer any of them the job, and they decided to offer the job back to the guy who said he wasn't going to take the job a bunch of times, and then he said he would take the job, and here we are. It just feels, even for the way that a lot of things go down in the city, it feels particularly dirty the way that the process happened.
Well, I admire that you've taken a stand here. I think that, again, a lot of people have expressed their opinions one way or another. Very few, I think, have been in a position to actually do something substantive as a result of those opinions. So,
thanks. I appreciate it.
Good job on that. Brendan?
Mike?
How are you doing?
I thought you guys were leaving me. It gets so
No.
far away. I think Chris Matthews actually solved this problem for us last night on his show Hardball on MSNBC.
Okay.
He was interviewing former mayor and now candidate for mayor of Providence, Buddy Cianci.
Mm-hmm.
And during his interview, if you watch it, the clip is on MSNBC's website. It's at the 2-minute mark. He actually turns around to Buddy Cianci and says, if I was a federal judge, I wouldn't have sent you to prison for your second corruption charge. I would have sent you up to Worcester, Massachusetts, with a mandate to turn that city around in 100 days. So I think Chris Matthews he's figured it all out. We do need a process, as Chris says. I completely agree with him. Right?
We need to be recruiting from the prisons, is what you're saying.
We need to be recruiting from the prisons. No, what we need, you just need
the
to
prison to politics pipeline, they call it.
You just need to have a concept and work with it, right? I mean, I think all of us here have acknowledged in the past we're big fans of The Wire, right? And when you're watching The Wire, you're constantly hearing people talking about the game. And whatever side of the game you're participating in, you can't actually play the game unless you know the rules. And I don't think anybody actually knows what the rules for getting hired as city manager are in the city. Mm-hmm. If it's just going to be about favoritism and whatnot, then fine, throw that out there. Make sure that people know that you have no say in the person that is going to be managing the city day to day, and then the people who are interested in such things can just do a better job of monitoring the city councilors who end up being that person's boss. Fine, I mean, just make that clear. This was one of those things, though, where it was just kind of thrown out there. And I have to believe on some level that Manager Augustus actually didn't intend on taking the job on the outset. He had a really great job to go back to. And on some level, I at least like to think that maybe he started this job and realized could be kind of a cool job, and maybe this is the thing that I've always wanted to do because I've had a lot of complaints and concerns about the city as an active member of local politics, and what better place to take care of some of that. But at the end of the day, that doesn't make anybody feel better, right? I mean, you end up maybe with even the solution that the majority of people in the city would have come to an agreement on had they at least understood what was going on behind the scenes.
If there was an election for city manager, it seems like it was the kind of thing that Ed Augustus might have been able to win, because people were super into him. A bunch of Chamber of Commerce got a bunch of business leaders to sign letters saying, please hire this guy, even though he doesn't want it. A ton of progressive activists and labor activists in the city were really pumped by this. I feel like I myself, not feeling like I'm no business leader, I'm no labor activist. I think Ed Augustus is a good guy.
But I think that's simultaneously part of the problem, right? Like when you have a lot of influence peddlers that are pushing somebody, when it comes to an election, you can at least do your best to judge the influence being peddled on its value and its merits. In this case, it just looks like you had a bunch of influence peddlers who had their favorite, who might have simultaneously been the public's favorite as well too, but without the public actually having any say in it. And at the same time, you got to wonder, did we waste a bunch of other people's time in terms of an actual interview process? And is it even possible that because of some of the dirt that was dug up on some of these people, that their futures as city managers and leaders in other communities might be tarnished in a way? I mean, we're bringing up bankruptcies that weren't relevant to anything. It seems like the whole thing just kind of fell apart on the folks who got what they wanted in the end, but also created a bit of a mess for themselves to sort through. And
is there just no, it seems like we got some candidates who you would be like, sure, yeah, I would hire this person as a city manager, and a lot of candidates who was like, no, you wouldn't really want to hire this person as a city manager. Is there just no competition? Is there just nobody looking for jobs in that area?
No, I think quite the contrary. I would go back and say that I would be fascinated to see what kind of advertisements actually went out and where we were looking. Like this seems to be one of those jobs that, like, in almost every high level of politics, you don't end up getting the people who are up and coming, like rising stars, right? Mm-hmm. You get the people who've already made a nut somewhere else, don't necessarily have to worry about finances and whatnot, and would love to have the opportunity to maybe take a step back and do something as a true public service, right?
Right.
Which is probably the sort of the sort of personality that Worcester should be searching for. That, someone who has done great things elsewhere, public, private sector, who cares, but could bring some vision and clarity of mind to a city that sometimes seems kind of scrambled the way it's doing things. I've never really been an opponent or proponent of the idea that it needs to be somebody local. We ended up with somebody local, and we ended up with a very competent person local. But again, the process seems to be more confusing and more muddled than it ever had been in the past. And as a result, I think it does make it hard for people to trust whether or not there is any sort of cohesive vision or an idea of what we're even shooting for here, other than making sure a guy we all like got a job that we think he'll be good for. Again, the end might be great for everybody, but it's how you got there that I think confuses people and probably upsets a lot of people simultaneously.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think those are all really good points, and I think there's so many. What frustrates me, a lot of things frustrate me. One of the things that frustrates me the most is that there's so many ways that we could have arrived at this outcome with that wouldn't have made me feel as dirty about the whole thing as I do. It would have been so easy to do it right. It just would have taken a tiny bit more effort.
Somebody could have said, I want to propose Ed Augustus, but let's see if anybody else wants to put their name in the hat, and we'll talk about it for a couple of weeks, and we'll hire a new city.
I mean, at the outset, at the time that when we were picking someone to fill the role on an interim basis, that could have been done. It would have taken an extra week. That's what it would have cost, an extra week for his name to be out there, to have some sort of conversation. They still could have lined up the votes. I mean, everybody knows they could have lined up the votes for Ed Augustus. If they could get them now, they could, they could get them now. There's a lot of ways in which it could have been done better, and so to see it done this badly just makes me feel like council just doesn't care about process. They just don't care what it looks like. And I think the other thing that Brendan was talking about with these other candidates is really worth talking about. I think to have people's dirty laundry getting aired here for this process where it's pretty clear now that we weren't going to hire any of these people. And the other thing I think is important to mention is that I really hope Ed sticks around, because man, the next time we go look for a city manager, I don't know who would apply for the job in Worcester after this all becomes public information for anyone who's applying, the way that it went down this time. I wouldn't apply for the job. I'd say they're going to find some inside guy in the end and stick him in there. So I think there's a lot of ramifications that some people seem not to care about, because the guy that we got in the end is a good guy, and I completely agree by the way that he is. I think he'll be, in all likelihood, very good at the job. I just think that the process was terrible, and it represents a city government that I didn't want to be an inside part of anymore, and that's why I decided to resign.
And that's the really crazy thing too, is that I think anyone that's worked in any form of any level of government at all realizes it's not hard to come up with a process that gives you the very outcome that you want, but at least gives the sense that you're pretending to play ball. And this wasn't that process at all. I mean, all we got out of this was we pulled Jimmy Smits out of his acting career and made him feel bad that we wouldn't then give him the job of running the city of Worcester. And that alone is something that we should all be looking in the mirror and saying,
Wait a second, Jimmy Smits was going to run for the...
One of the finalists looked exactly like him. That was a bad joke. I'm sorry, but yeah, no. I mean, we should all be quite kicking ourselves for passing on the opportunity of
That
Jimmy
dude was
Smits
almost
being-
the president at one point.
That wasn't Jimmy Smith. That was I think that was one of his co-stars from the show. That was almost president. That wasn't Jimmy Smith.
I don't know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so I want to read some letters from people. We actually didn't get any comments about the last show. We got a very long comment from Jim May about the previous show, but that was too many months ago. But we did get some comments for this show, some suggestions of what we should talk about on this show. Thank you again for those. I want to actually read Jim May's suggestion. I just want to read this because I feel like it's just thought-provoking. So I'm going to read the best part of this. We should talk about the ongoing expansion of the urban core from Kilby Gardner to Osgood Bradley to the Worcester Art Museum and Gateway Park, and how the internationalism of that area will force Worcester to contend with its parochialism.
And I think by just reading that comment, we actually have done the topic justice.
I want people to think about this, so I'm going to say it one more time. Think about the ongoing expansion of the urban core from Kilby Gardner, you call this Main South, roughly Main South,
Sure.
to Osgood Bradley, which is the building which is kind of adjacent to Union Station.
Mm-hmm.
There's a famous building, Ron Paul sign building,
Yes.
Tracy Novick sign building, Brad Wyatt's building. Kilby Gardner to Osgood Bradley to the Worcester Art Museum and Gateway Park. And how the, quote, internationalism, end quote, of that area will force Worcester to contend with its parochialism. That's a great right there. Keep sending in these comments. Keep sending in these letters. We also got a comment. So many things that people wanted us to talk about. But Mary wanted us to talk about a 3K that's going on October 18th. The Hip Hip Hoorace. It's a 3K raising money for the Abby's House Women's Shelter in downtown Worcester. Go online, and if you want to run a 3K, you should do it. You ever run one of these charity races?
I've told you before, my cops and dogs are the only things that encourage me to run.
Super fun, these charity races.
Come on, we're trying to do a show here. It's 40 degrees outside. Who is buying ice cream today?
The sun's out.
He was really hoping we were buying ice cream.
He's like, these guys don't know how to have fun. They're not going to buy
That guy
me
looks like he eats ice cream. Look at him.
Chris Robarge, ladies and gentlemen.
Never the same show twice.
And then I guess finally, I think we should just wind down and talk about recommendations. What you're excited about in Worcester this week? I have 4 recommendations, so I'll let you guys go first.
I have go to Chris. I'd have to think about that.
What are you excited?
God,
What
I
are you
definitely
excited
have to
about?
think about that. What am I excited about in Worcester this week? Honestly, I've got nothing.
I got 4 things, Chris. Let me tell you about these 4 things. You guys.
I don't have nothing because there's nothing exciting going on. I've only been back in town a couple days and I don't know what's going on.
Well, I can tell you here. I'm going to tell you now.
do.
This is what's going on, people. Number 1, Brian Goslow's article in Worcester Magazine, his cover article about riding the bus. I read this article. This article's awesome. It's just Brian Goslow riding the bus for a couple of days, talking to everybody on the bus, and getting their story of their life and how the bus intersects with their story.
So what you're saying is Brian Goslow pilfered our idea from when we did our anniversary show on the bus and picked up all of our guests and viewers along the way.
I think that Brian did not pilfer. I think that we pilfered. I think that
Our eyes on
ever
you,
since
Brian
there's been a
Goslow,
bus, people have
stealing
been
our stories.
Anyway, I think that's the kind of articles that I love to see when somebody writes a long article, which is just like, I'm just going to tell you about a bunch of little details about Worcester life that you don't know, and I'm going to connect them all together. However, but here's just a bunch of stories about Worcester. It was cool. The Pirates of Penzance is coming to the Hanover Theater this Saturday. I don't know, which is directly competing with the Rock and Shock. I'm going to be at the Pirates of Penzance. You know, I don't know if I can. I think Opera Providence is doing this, and I don't know if I can recommend the Pirates of Penzance. If you're not excited by it, you shouldn't go see it. But if you are excited about it, you should. Oh man. There's a series of screenings and activities that are beginning this week around the films of Alejandro Jodorowsky. I can't go this week, but I'm going to go to every subsequent one. I'm super excited about this. You know, Jodorowsky, creator of films like Holy Mountain, the first cult midnight movie smash El Topo, and recently there's a documentary about his attempt back in the 70s to make a film of Dune, which is, people really love this documentary. Anyway, I'm super excited by this. Films and activities surrounding the films.
Got something
cool.
I'd like to add to you there, Mike. Not actually this week, but you can do it this week if you're watching the show. At the end of November, I think it's the weekend of the 20th thereabouts, Elf the Musical is going to be at the Hanover Theater, and I think everybody in the city should go and celebrate what is by far the greatest Christmas movie of all time, Elf, in seat and musical form at the Hanover Theater. And if anyone from the production is watching this, I would do anything. I've already bought my tickets, but I would do absolutely anything to be somehow involved in that production. If you can get me up on stage as an elf.
Let's look at Brendan for a second.
It's very elf-like.
You could totally pull off being an elf.
Right? I mean, come on. You don't even need prosthetics there. Don't go too close. I don't know if I cleaned them today. But yeah, Elf the Musical. I think everybody should be there for that one.
I'm excited that we're recommending things at the Hanover. We never do that.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's any that we're not paying attention to the Hanover. I think it's just a matter of the Hanover finding things that fits more of our interests.
Yeah, I pretty much.
You got no idea what's going on.
I got no idea what's going on. I'm sorry. I should know what's going on. I feel like people look to me sometimes to know what's going on, and I feel like I'm failing everyone utterly right now.
The city looks to Chris Robarge, and Chris Robarge says, I don't know.
Don't look to me this week.
If the people involved with the production of Elf were to offer you the part that Artie Lang played of the angry Santa in Elf, would you be willing to take that
I
on?
would be willing to take any and all parts for no compensation except for the experience.
Elf the
So,
Musical
call
people,
me.
you have an entire cast right here in Winslow Peace Park. Come on, get on it.
Well, guys, thanks for being on the show this week.
Thanks for having us.
This has been the 508 Show. If you have any complaints or questions, you can email them to pieandcoffee@gmail.com, and we are very happy to read them on the show. I hope we can do more than one show a month, man. One show a month just feels weird to me.
Yeah.
Chris Robarge, thank you.
Thank you.
Brendan Milliken, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Michael Benedetti saying thank you, the viewer, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.